Hi there. If you're seeing this, it means I've done something kind of special. I'll talk about that a little later. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things going on in the news. Don't ask, don't tell. In 60 days, it will be no more. Kids who are born today will grow up in a world without discrimination in the armed services. That, I think, is a very important thing to note. There are a lot of people who have different feelings on the subject. And there are those who will say, well, both sides have legitimate arguments. That's not true. That's just not true. There are people who believe that we should be progressive, and we should be enlightened, and we should allow everyone who wants to serve, no matter what, as long as they're able to do the job. And then there are those who refuse to hear the valid, sane, rational arguments about letting people serve openly. It doesn't mean we're going to have prancing, mincing little pink uniformed soldiers running around. It means that we're going to have a much stronger, much more focused, much more intelligent fighting force. There are people who say that their religious beliefs are being oppressed. They don't know what oppression is. When you've been run down in the streets, chased down alleyways, beaten up just because of who you are or who you appear to be, then you know oppression. When you're fired from your job for simply casually remarking about your date last night, when you are refused a rental apartment because of who you might be sharing that one bedroom with, when you're told you can't come in this church, you can't be served in this restaurant, then you'll know oppression. That's all a part of what Don't Ask, Don't Tell is about repealing. It's not just about the military. It's about us growing and maturing as a country, as a people. Everyone else has done it. We're the last holdouts. So, there are some videos on the subject, and I thought I'd share some of them with you.
U.S. Marines rise early, work hard, and follow orders. They're creatures of routine, but one thing is certain to change at military bases like Camp Pendleton. Soon, gay service members can be open about their identities and not fear dismissal.
The repeal has already happened, okay, but the implementation hasn't happened yet.
The 17-year-old policy, commonly known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell, is now a part of military history. It held as long as gays didn't reveal their orientation in active service, they could remain in uniform. In this case, Marines are getting briefed by an officer about what's changing.
There will be no discharge based upon your sexual orientation.
And what's not.
The United States government isn't trying to change what you believe, okay?
Still, everyone must follow commands, even if their religious beliefs condemn homosexuality.
My religion is being put aside just so that I can accept, someone else's preference sexually.
Is anybody telling you what to believe? Since it's a personal, private matter, it's not really open for discussion. Nobody's trying to change your mind. Nobody's trying to change their mind.
Before a packed auditorium, members of the 1st Marine Logistics Group had plenty of questions.
What comes first, religion or sexuality? Because if somebody is very religious and they are, I guess, against it in several ways, are they gonna? Is it bad for them to go say, "Hey, I don't want to be a roommate with that person because of their sexuality"?
Harassment and discrimination based on sexual orientation is now against military law. There will be no segregation based on it either.
We already serve with gays and lesbians and bisexuals. I mean, it's just a matter of them being able to talk about it now.
Some welcomed the transition, some expressed unease.
People live in the barracks and have to share the same rooms with them and shower with them. That's personally, it would make me uncomfortable.
The lifting of the ban on gays openly serving in the armed forces could go into full effect by the end of this year. John Moan, Associated Press, Camp Pendleton, California.
And the Marines themselves put together a little video to help prepare the other soldiers on how to deal with this new policy.
Marines, sailors, for the past decade, we've engaged in constant combat operations. Today, we serve our nation at a critical time in its history. It's a challenging time, but we've been up to every task. Our fidelity to one another is our moral compass that guides us. It is the foundation of what being a Marine is all about. Above all else, we are loyal to the Constitution, our Commander-in-Chief, Congress, our chain of command, and the American people.
The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell will take effect after our nation's senior leadership has determined an appropriate timeline for implementation. Currently, we have an operational planning team working with the Department of Defense to determine the best way forward.
The Marine Corps exists to defend our nation. We are a nation of laws. We are committed through our oath and core values to abide by these laws. Our success as Marines has always been grounded in the quality of our leadership, from general officers to small unit leaders.
Throughout the history of our Corps, Marines have always been professional, carrying on our warrior ethos and maintaining our core values. The Marine Corps is a diverse force, and all have earned the privilege to wear the Eagle Globe and Anchor. As Marines, we are confident you will continue to treat each other with dignity and respect. The Commandant and I have trust in the great leadership of our Corps, from junior Marines to the most senior. As always, engaged leadership will be the key to implementation.
I want to be clear to all Marines. We will step out smartly to faithfully implement this new law. It's important that we value the diversity of background, culture, and skills that all Marines bring to the service of our nation. As we implement repeal, I want leaders at all levels to reemphasize maintaining dignity and respect for one another throughout our force. We are Marines. We care for one another and respect the rights of all who wear this uniform. We will continue to demonstrate to the American people that discipline and fidelity, which have been the hallmarks of the United States Marine Corps for more than 235 years, will continue well into the future.
But of course, there are some who just wouldn't let it go. And there was a female senator or congressperson at a hearing on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, who was trying to make her case as to why this shouldn't go through.
I just would like to ask, I'm very concerned with what I'm hearing today, that we are going to expose our troops to moderate risk. And General Casey said it's another level of stress, it's more complicated.
And I'd say it's going to war places the force at least moderate risk.
General, thanks.
When you put someone's life at risk in any operation, it's oftentimes heavy risk, high risk.
Sure.
And ma'am, what we do is inherently dangerous, whether it's flying from the deck of an aircraft carrier, running a nuclear power submarine at 800 feet under the sea. It's inherently dangerous, and we know how to manage the risk.
Have you been involved in recommending a policy, though, that where there was a moderate risk before? That was the question. Have you done that yet at some other time in your career? Yeah.
What we do is inherently dangerous, whether it's...
So, I mean, war is risk, I mean, obviously, but this is a change in policy that's going to add a moderate risk onto the already inherent risk of war.
He rated it as moderate risk. However, we have not completed enough of our training for him at this time to say it's not still moderate risk. But at the same time, we put together a very, very good training package that emphasizes our role as professional soldiers that we believe is going to mitigate that risk.
From my heart, in your gut, you know this is not the right thing.
It's just really undemocratic.
We have men and women in harm's way. We're at war as a country, and yet we are talking about one of the most monumental changes of policy that this country has ever faced in its military forces. And
I don't know who they are, and I don't care at this point.
It's fallen upon you at this time in history to be able to give the final say to the Secretary of Defense and to Admiral Mullen, whether you, in your right mind and your heart of hearts and your professional career, you believe this is going to help improve our forces from this time on out and help us win wars.
Anecdote from some of the surveys that was done with regard to one of our Navy SEALs. A comment was made, he's big, he's bad, he kills a lot of bad guys, and by the way, he's gay.
So this is about the Constitution.
There's an opportunity to not certify this.
Of the normal decency and respect that we have for one another.
But I want to challenge you that you are the last force to be able to stop this owner's policy.
Bill Robinson, this is about the Constitution and our oath to it.
Tell me,
we're loyal.
I'd like to know how the repeal increases combat effectiveness.
Inclusive organizations are usually the best kinds of organizations.
Peace of mind for a portion of our Marine Corps that is gay and lesbian. They've been there since 1993 when the law was in there. I don't know how many of them are, but we know that they're there. I don't know who they are, and I don't care at this point. But my sense for them, there'll be a peace of mind that they've been unable to have prior to this.
I'd like to know how the repeal increases combat effectiveness.
As you so well know, because of your service, Congressman, is the integrity and the belief that people can have in being frank and honest and open. And I believe that now becomes part of our force in a way that it has not been.
I think I heard that we don't know whether it will increase combat effectiveness or not yet. It will increase the effectiveness of
I believe that we will see great young sailors who perhaps otherwise would not serve, will be able to serve and
I'd like to know how the repeal increases combat effectiveness.
Three things. Clearly, peace of mind. There's the potential for keeping otherwise have to depart our Air Force, and it potentially increases the recruiting pool. We shall see.
You are the last force to be able to stop.
So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my own personal don't ask, don't tell story. I graduated from high school in 1979 in a small town in the Midwest in Wisconsin near Milwaukee. Apparently the custom of the time was that recruiters would come to your high school campuses and they would try and get you to sign up for military service. Senior year, they were real adamant. They were very, very persistent. And I had been getting, notes, and I'd been getting, people trying to talk to me about different branches of the military. And I was pretty well avoiding it. By that time, I had come out to my family, and I was adjusting to a life as an out gay person in a town of about 3,000 people. All of whom knew me, knew my family, and I felt more alone than ever, but I felt okay with myself. So, finally, I had decided to talk to the recruiters. The Marines, they had been pushing pretty hard, and I said to them, okay, fine, you come over to my apartment where my mother and I and my little brother lived, and we'll talk about this. Sounds like a great idea. And so one day they did. They came over. It was just me and two kind of overweight Marine recruiters. I'm sure at one time they were fit and fine fighting men, but they were now behind a desk trying to get other people to become fit and fighting men and women. So we talked about what I liked, and I openly said I like theater. I would like to put together the recruiting films and the commercials and those type of things. And we talked about some of the programs they had that would help me pursue what I at that time wanted to do, which was theater and film. About an hour into the conversation, I said, this sounds like a really great idea, but there's a bit of a problem. And they looked at me sort of with that head tilted look. I said, I'm a practicing homosexual. And they sort of sat back a little bit and they looked at each other and they said, well, our policy right now is that we don't allow open homosexuals in the military service. And I said, boy, that's really a shame, because I'd really, really like to be a part of your service. And they packed up their little tote bags, and I have never seen two big fat recruiters move so fast in my life. This was not without repercussion, of course. It was a small town, and the recruiters were from my town. I did not know them personally, but in our small town we have a 4th of July celebration, and one of the mainstays of that celebration is what's called the beer tent. Anyone from the Midwest knows about the beer tent. It's where everybody goes and they drink beer, lots of it. And they get local people to help pour the beer and stuff like that. And of course, there was one day I went down to this little 4th of July carnival, and in the beer tent serving beer was one of the recruiters. He saw me, I saw him, and then I saw him going over to people, not really purposefully, but while he was chatting to them, he would turn and look at me, and I would notice he would, point to me and nod his head toward me and talk about things. And I noticed people were sort of checking me out, like I was somehow different than I was before. And afterwards, I kind of hung around, and I saw when he had finished working the beer tent, I was brave or stupid enough to go up to him. I was a 17-year-old kid, kind of on the pudgy side. Yeah, go figure. And I said to him, listen, what you and I talked about in my home was private. You had no right to discuss it with anybody else. Don't try and deny it. I know you did. I could see the way people were looking at me. And it wasn't your place. And he, of course, denied it and, walked away. Well, those were very different times. I'm a much bigger person than he is, and I don't miss serving in the military. My family has served. My father was in the Army. He was in the National Guard. He even was one of the curators of the Arizona State Military Museum. My brother served. Two of my brothers have served in the Army. And there's been a lot of good to come of all of the military service. But until we get a repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and people can serve openly, and people who want to serve can serve, there's no way we can have the good fighting force, the military defense that we so drastically believe we need. Oh my God, guys, check this out. One of my favorite people, Stephen Colbert, did a video for the It Gets Better project. I think it's really cool.
Hi, this is Stephen Colbert. I have a message for any gay and lesbian teens out there. And I'm being told also bisexual and transgendered. Really anybody who's being picked on. It sucks. I agree. When I was in 7th grade, I remember being picked on all the time. And I got called queer a lot. And it just sort of the word that got thrown as a weapon at people when I was a kid. And just the most hurtful thing I think that the bullies could think of calling you. And I didn't like it. And one day I had this revelation because a friend of mine named Pat, who also got picked on by the bullies, was called queer by one of the bullies, a big jock. And Pat, instead of sort of flinching or running away, turned around and said, yeah, I am a queer. Kiss me. And the bully said, what are you talking about? And he said, I'm queer. You called me queer. I am a queer. Kiss me. I'll prove it. And the bully didn't know what to say. And he just turned around and walked away quietly. And I was stunned. I couldn't believe the magic that Pat had just worked. He had somehow figured out that if you don't give power to the words that people throw at you to hurt you, they don't hurt you anymore. And you actually have power over those people. And that's a lesson that I am grateful to him for my entire life. So if you can, realize that the things that people say about you don't really matter. It's who you are. And the older you get, the more you'll understand that. Because it gets better. People get nicer too.
There's a man we had the pleasure to meet here in Tucson. His name is Roy Zimmerman. If you get a chance, he's a great, liberal, progressive, funny entertainer. He's kind of like, for those of you who are old enough, Tom Lehrer. He's kind of like Mark Russell. Anyone remember Mark Russell? He was funny. Whatever happened to him? But he was here in Tucson. He does small venues. He does large. I think he should have his own half-hour special. But, be that as it may. I found some of his videos online, and I thought I'd share one of them with you. It's about the institution of marriage. Enjoy.
And if you're two consenting adults, and which of us isn't? It's nobody's business who you love, right? Nobody's business who you love, where you love, what equipment you might use. It's interesting, but it's nobody's business. Actually, the equipment is somebody's business. And yet the traditional values people are all upset over homosexuality in the workplace, in the movies, in the Boy Scouts. And they should just realize that homosexuality in the Boy Scouts is a tradition. Get behind it. Every time we think about same-sex marriage, it makes us sick to our guts. I mean, to people who want to commit to a stable, monogamous, lifelong relationship, what are they, nuts? It's unnatural. Now, a man should not lie with a person who is a guy. He should only lie to his wife. The Bible is clear. We're defenders of marriage in 3-button suits. We'll raise our double standard and see who salutes. Defenders of marriage, defending the institution against people who want to get married. Every time we think about same-sex parents, oh my gosh, we exclaim. I mean, to people who want to provide a protected and nurturing family environment, have they no shame? So deviant. It's the Lord's holy word, as my second wife said to my third. That a family's based on obligation and fear. We're defenders of marriage, connubial narcs, ever vigilant and patriotic patriarchs. Defenders of marriage, defending the institution against people who want to get married. One summer evening when my woman was doing laundry, I shared a six-pack with an old John Bircher, and oh so wisely he imparted an ancient quandary to ponder. He said it's nature versus legislature. Are people born gay, or do they turn gay just to piss off Dick Armey? We're an army of dicks with a militant stance. Let's get the government out of our lives and into our pants. Defenders of marriage, defending the institution against people who want to get married and have their insurance carried and be beneficiaried and be next to the ones they love when they are buried.
Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I learned a real valuable lesson. That if I have to, I can put together an entire episode of OutWest in under 8 hours. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. And I know you're going to wonder, where's Ray? Well, Ray is busy. Ray is a student at the university, and he's having summer classes, and he's getting ready for the fall semester, so he's been a little busy. And I know I miss him, and I know you miss him, but don't worry, he'll be back real soon. Thanks.
Your eyes to me are precious stones on a face that's made of solid gold. When a